Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, Picture Perfect Spring Picture Books for Young Readers. I am Ronny Khuri, Associate Editor, Books for Youth at Booklist. And before we begin, I would like to go over some technical details. If you're in the audience, you are in listen-only mode, but we do welcome any questions you may have. On the bottom of your screen is a toolbar with a section for Q&A. If you have a question, if you need technical assistance, just click Q&A and type your message into the box that appears. We will do our best to respond to all tech-related questions, and we'll pass along all other questions to today's panelists. That way they can follow up with you after the webinar. Links to today's slides and title list were included in the reminder email you received from Zoom 1 hour ago. To download them, please open that email, scroll to the bottom, and click on the links located there. You can also download these materials at any time by copying the URLs on this screen into your web browser. Today, we're going to have the pleasure of hearing from Leah Henderson, author of A Day for Rememberin from Abrams Books for Young Readers, Kristen Luby, marketing manager at Macmillan Children's Publishing Group, Laura Bowman, Sales and Marketing Manager at Pajama Press, Michael Plotz, Associate Marketing Manager at DK, and Allison McLaughlin, Marketing Manager at Owlkids. First up, we're going to hear from Leah Henderson. Leah writes for young readers of all ages, and her books have been named a Children's Africana Book Awards Notable, a Bank Street Best Book, and an SCBWI Golden Kite finalist. She mentors at-risk teens in self-empowerment, business, and writing, and her volunteer work has roots in Mali, West Africa. She attended Callaloo Writing Workshop at Oxford University, is on Highlights Foundation faculty, helps with conference planning for Quelly Journal's The Color of Children's Literature, and is on a committee for We Need Diverse Books. She is on faculty in the MFA program at Spalding University's School of Creative and Professional Writing. And she's here today to give us a behind-the-scenes look at her new forthcoming picture book from Abrams Books for Young Readers, which is called A Day for Rememberin. Thank you so much for being here today, Leah.
Thank you so much for having me. And thank you all for joining us today so we can share our upcoming titles with you. My first slide, please. So today I'm going to talk about A Day for Rememberin, which is inspired by true events of the first Memorial Day. It is illustrated by the wonderfully talented Floyd Cooper and will be out from Abrams Books on May 11th of this year. And I guess the best way to start telling you about this story is from the very beginning. A few years ago, I was doing research for another book. I love to do research. And while I was doing research for that book, I came upon an image. Next slide, please. And I was immediately fascinated. So it's a group of Black children saluting an American flag in a field. And I wanted to know all about it. I kind of froze for a second and just kind of wrapped myself in this moment. And I was smiling from ear to ear. And I remember thinking, okay, forget about this project that I'm working on right now. I want to know more about this moment. And so I started doing some more research and I came to two stories. Next slide, please. So the first one I found was about a day that was remembering Flag Day. It was a Flag Day celebration in Hampton, Virginia in the late 1800s. And one of the wonderful things about living in Washington, D.C. is that the Library of Congress is not that far away. So I really have to thank the librarians there for helping me track down this image and knowing exactly what it was and when it was. So I cannot take credit for that. I just knew to go to the right people. But the other thing that I often saw tied to this image, next slide, please, was a day in 1865. It was a decoration day in Charleston, South Carolina. And I was immediately intrigued because I was like, why are these kids associated with a Memorial Day celebration or ceremony? And so upon further research, next slide, please, I came to find that there was documentation that a group of nearly 3,000 newly freed enslaved children, school children, had led a march that was in ceremony of remembrance for the fallen Union soldiers in Charleston, South Carolina. And I was like, oh my goodness, I've never heard of this. I need to know more. And so I started doing research on Memorial Day. Next slide, please. And so what I came to find is that there are a number of places that lay claim to the beginnings of Memorial Day. There are some women back in Columbus, Mississippi in April of 1866 who lay claim to the beginnings of the holiday, in that maybe a group of 5 women went to Confederate graves and decorated Confederate soldiers there. And a thing to remember about that moment is that they ignored the graves of the Union dead. So that was in remembrance of the fallen Confederate soldiers. Then on May 5th in 1866 in Waterloo, New York, those citizens, and this was considered a community-wide event, those citizens decorated the graves of their local veterans, right? So it was Northern, so it was the Union soldiers there. And so that became the official quote unquote birthplace of Memorial Day. But it was officially celebrated in May of 1868 in Arlington National Cemetery, where they were remembering both Union dead and Confederate dead soldiers. But the date and the place that I was curious about, next slide, please, was a May Day celebration, a May 1st celebration in 1865, again in Charleston, South Carolina. And when I looked at the notes that I was finding about this celebration, and that image of the children kept coming back and kept coming back, I was like, okay, I need to do my own research. I need to understand where the roots of this particular celebration started. So next slide, please. And so what I came to find was there was a Washington horse racing track. And during the end of the Civil War, they held Union troops there. And they were held in the open. They had no covering. And a lot of the accounts will talk about there were ditches where they would bury themselves to keep warm. And so I was interested in this because what was also happening at that time is the Black citizens of Charleston were sneaking food to these Union troops. And this particular area was kind of considered a small Andersonville in their treatment and cruelty of the Union soldiers that were kept there, many of whom were dying of disease. And then next click, please. And then what I came to understand was that when Charleston surrendered in February of 1865, this Union prison was closed. But what they had done was they had buried the dead in unmarked graves with no coffins in this area. And so what happened at that point were a group of citizens, a group of Black citizens decided we need to remember those who died in part for our freedom. And so what ended up happening at that point is a group of men, next slide, about 27 to 28 men, Black men from a local church, decided that they would go and rebury the dead and give them markers, and they would also create a fencing around that area. And so when I read all of this, I was like, this is a story that children need to hear as well. It's being documented for adults, but it also needs to be documented for children. And some of the images that you're seeing are wonderful moments in the book by Floyd. And so the next slide, please. And so then my favorite thing started happening, my research. I started trying to find everything that I could, whether it was diary entries. There were newspaper articles. There were some that were really short. There were others that were longer. There were lots of write-ups on it buried within other things. You know, it would be a small little section here, or a little section there. Then I would find some photographs, and I started getting really, really excited. And I wanted to tell this story. But one of the things about telling stories for children is you want to find their way in, right? A way in for them to really understand what's going on. And because this is a heavier topic, I was struggling to find that way in because it was really about what those 27 to 28 men did with the reburying of the Union dead. And so it wasn't until one day I just started thinking really deeply about how a child would see this and view this and how they would tell that story. Next slide, please. That I came to my heart for this story. And my heart is a little boy named Eli. And he represents one of the children of those 28 men who go and do this work voluntarily, right? They were not compensated for their time. And so for 10 days, they reburied the dead. They gave them markers. They built a fence, and then they built an archway over the race course that said Martyrs of the Racetrack. And so when I found Eli, that's when I came to my story. That's when I came to the voice of who could tell this moment in history in a way that kids could come into it and understand. Next slide, please. And so pretty early on, this was one of the scenes that I created. And this is a day where Eli is finally getting to go with his father to help the men do the work that they are doing to remember the fallen Union soldiers. And so I'm just going to read you this little portion. Without a word, Papa and the other men get to digging, hammering, and cutting wood. Papa points to the fence where some of the school children have joined their papas too. Help with the whitewashing, Eli. I drag my feet, though, wanting to stay in Papa's side. But he rushes around doing more work in a minute than he's done on 3 hours on Master's land. An old usher from the church pushes a paintbrushing in my hand, and I get to working too. As the sun beats our backs, the men sing in heavy, deep voices that rattle the dirt. And that was when I found Eli, and that was when I found my way into the story. Next slide, please. And that's how Martyrs of the Racecourse and A Day for Remembering was created. And I thank you so much for the opportunity to share a little bit of the behind the scenes about this special book to me. And one of the main reasons I really wanted to tell the story is because it is very rare that we see Black people's contribution to major holidays. And this was one that by many was covered up in a number of ways. And so I'm glad that it is coming to light for young readers. So thank you so much. And I would like to pass the baton over to Ginny Chow. Thank you.
Thanks for that great presentation, Leah. So thoughtful. Hi, everyone. I'm Jenny Choi, Associate Director of School and Library Marketing over at Abrams. If you're thinking to yourself, I really want to take a look at Leah's book, A Day for Remembering, then you can do so at our online preview that you'll find the URL right on screen right now. So head on over there, and I'll pass it over to Kristen over at Macmillan.
Thank you, Jenny, and thank you, Leah. That was fantastic. So yes, next we will be hearing from Kristen Luby. And Kristen is the School and Library Marketing Manager at Macmillan Children's Publishing Group. She owes her love of picture books to the Children's Storytime at Middletown Public Library in her hometown of Middletown, New Jersey. She now lives in Brooklyn, New York, and is excited to share new picture books with you and your readers. Take it away, Kristen.
Thanks, Ronnie, and thanks everyone for spending some time with us today to hear about our new picture books. I'll kick things off with easily one of the most beautiful picture books of the year. The Wisdom of Trees combines lyrical poetry, nonfiction facts, and lush illustrations into a gorgeous picture book that shares a powerful message of learning to work together in harmony, just like trees do. Next slide, please. As Lita explains on the opening page, forest ecologists have learned that trees have their own secret language that can't be seen or heard. They use this language to work together with their communities because trees can live longer if they work together to help support and defend each other. Each turn of the page reveals a breathtaking 2-page spread and a poem that imagines what trees might say to each other if they did use words. Next slide, please. Plus, a paragraph accompanies each spread to explain scientific facts about trees around the world. Perfect for poetry units and packed with STEM facts, there's so many details to marvel over in this book. It also includes extensive back matter with even more info about trees, a message about sustainability, and a glossary of terms. Next up, The Lost Package is a story that's very near and dear to author Richard Ho's heart. As he explains in his author's note, he literally might not be here to tell it if it wasn't for the United States Post Office. When his parents first immigrated to the United States, they thought they wouldn't be able to support their growing family until his father found a job at the post office where he worked for over 30 years. Next slide, please. This picture book is an ode to this vital American institution. Through Jessica Lannon's beautiful watercolor illustrations, readers follow a package from its starting point to its final destination, even as it falls off a truck and gets lost along the way. Next slide, please. This story offers curious readers a fascinating glimpse behind the scenes at the post office and gives them an idea of how mail gets delivered. But beyond that, this is a heartfelt story about a family moving across the country who ultimately deliver the lost package to its owner and make new friends, a satisfying ending to a well-delivered story. Have you ever had the feeling that you forgot to do something important, but you just couldn't remember what? Or how about the feeling that everyone's giving you funny looks, but you don't know why? Well, one day Jeff the Bear is experiencing just that. Next slide, please. Something's definitely wrong, but he decides to just play it cool and make casual conversation with every animal he runs into, but he can't shake the feeling that something is wrong. So he asks his friend Anders the hare, who breaks it to him gently, "Dude, you're wearing underwear." And when Jeff and Anders run into a gaggle of forest creatures, Anders backs him up by putting on his own pair and insisting underwear is all the rage, and actually they're weird for not wearing them. Next slide, please. And soon every animal is putting on underpants. With the same side-splitting humor he brought to his New York Times bestsellers, The Good Egg and The Bad Seed, Jury John delivers a hilarious read aloud that is sure to have kids giggling and demanding repeated readings. From Caldecott Honor winner Elisha Cooper comes a new picture book that humorously illustrates the concepts of opposites through a day in the life of a cat and a puppy. Next slide, please. Cat and puppy couldn't be more different. When you ask puppy if he wants to go outside, the answer is yes, 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 oh please, yes. And cat, well, if I must. Puppy is excited about everything, whereas the cat just deigns to be there. Next slide, please. But by the end of the day, readers will realize that cat and puppy are more similar than they appear, and sometimes the best days are simply the ones we spend together. This adorable picture book is a timeless tale of friendship that cat and dog lovers alike will love. Next slide, please. Sunrise Summer is a very personal story for Robbie Bear and Matthew Swanson, the husband and wife duo behind the popular Real McCoy's chapter book series. As you can see here in her author's note, Robbie explains that this is a story of her family's yearly salmon fishing trip. Every summer, her family travels to Alaska to a remote town with no grocery store to become commercial salmon fishermen. This author's note at the back of the book shares more fascinating details about all the work her family does to catch and sell about 10,000 salmon each summer. Next slide, please. But the actual story of Sunrise Summer follows one of their daughters, next slide, please, who's finally old enough to assist her family on their fishing crew. She wakes up at 4 a.m., dons her fishing gear, and joins her family out at the beach where they keep an eye out for grizzly bears and work together to pull in nets full of fish. Next slide, please. More than just an adventure story, this is a story about a girl who is empowered to take on new responsibilities, growing her self-confidence as she realizes she is capable, brave, and strong. And while you may not think you ever want to become a salmon fisherman, this picture book will make readers crave their own adventure. Next slide, please. Eisner Award nominee and native New Yorker Sean Rubin writes a powerfully moving story about healing after tragedy in This Very Tree, a picture book about the Callery pear tree that survived the attacks of September 11th. Next slide, please. Dubbed the survivor tree, the Callery tree stood between the Twin Towers, and a month after the attacks on 9/11, the tree was discovered beneath the rubble. Shockingly, it had survived. It was transported to the Bronx and nursed back to health, and almost a decade later, the tree returned home and was planted in the 9/11 memorial. Next slide, please. Told from the perspective of a tree, this story gently alludes to the events of 9/11, but focuses specifically on the tree's story. 2021 marks the 20th anniversary of this tragic event, and this is a reverently told story that could be used to gently introduce the topic with young readers. However, next slide, please. This is also a story that will speak to older readers with its themes of resilience and perseverance. After this tragic event, the tree heals and regrows along with the city of New York. This story is a touching tribute to a nation rocked by tragedy and the first responders who risked their lives to save others. The book also includes back matter with even more details about the real Callery tree's story. Next slide, please. Caldecott honoree Vera Brosgol brings her signature quirky humor to a new picture book about cherishing your memories while also learning to live in the moment. In Memory Jars, a young girl named Frida is making blueberry jam with her gran when she is struck by an idea. What if she could save all her favorite things in a jar, just like she does with her jam, so she'll never run out of her favorite things? Next slide, please. So Frida starts saving everything. She jars Gran's freshly baked cookies. She jars her neighbor's beautiful singing voice. She even jars her best friend Jack so he won't move to Arizona, until finally Frida has saved everything but Gran, who she jars last. Next slide. But as Frida takes a bite of jam on toast, the taste brings back the memories of summer days spent picking berries with Gran and having fun with Jack. And she realizes that sometimes the most important things can't be saved forever, that we have to cherish what we have in the moment, and that memories that live within us are the sweetest of all. Best of all, this sweet picture book even includes a recipe for blueberry jam. The idea for I Wish You Knew came from Jackie Azua's Kramer's work as a school counselor. She asked students to write down what they wish she knew about them. In their answers, they told her that sometimes they came to school hungry, or that they lived in a shelter, or that their parents worked all the time, or that their parents had been deported. Their stories inspired this moving picture book. Next slide, please. In I Wish You Knew, readers will meet Estrella, who wishes her teacher and classmates knew that her father has been deported and she misses him every day. When she sits alone at school or forgets her homework, she wishes they knew why. Throughout the story, readers will also meet Estrella's teachers and classmates. In their classroom sharing circle, they learn that each of them is dealing with their own personal struggle and that none of them are alone, and together they can support each other. Next slide, please. This story also addresses immigration and deportation in an accessible way and touches on themes of childhood uncertainty and anxiety. A Spanish language edition will also be released simultaneously with the English edition. In the next picture book, a small knight battles childhood anxiety in this adorable debut picture book. The king and queen hope their child will grow up to be a proper princess, but that's not what small knight wants, and they are worried their parents will be upset. Next slide, please. Small Knight's worry grows bigger and bigger until one day it becomes an anxiety monster. So Small Knight goes on a magical quest to learn how to fight this monster. Neither the wise owl nor the queen of moths know anything about anxiety monsters, but finally they ask a dragon for help, who tells them to look inside themselves. Next slide, please. Only by confronting their own fears can Small Knight trap the anxiety monster. It might not be gone for good, but this is a touching story about learning to live with anxiety and being true to yourself in the process. Next slide, please. You may already be familiar with Lydia Sigworth's story if you listen to NPR's This American Life. On their episode, The Room of Requirement, Lydia told a story about the library in Wisconsin where her family spent every day for 6 months. Next slide, please. For Lydia, this was a magical time, especially because of a very special librarian named Mrs. S, who knew all the right books to share, who looked Lydia in the eyes and treated her like a grown-up. Years later, Lydia realized that the reason she and her family spent so much time in the library was because they were homeless. But Lydia never remembered that time as traumatic. She remembered it fondly, mostly because of Mrs. S. As an adult, next slide, please, she tracked down Mrs. S to thank her for her kindness and to tell her about the impact she had on Lydia's life. So impactful that Lydia grew up to become a librarian. This picture book is a love letter to libraries and a thank you letter to librarians, a story about the safe space that a library can be for a young person in need, and the feeling of being seen by a librarian who knows exactly the right book for you and believes you are a special person. I've cried every time I've read it, so I would recommend having a box of tissues on hand for this one. A final picture book, Thank You, Dr. Salk, is a non-fiction picture book about Dr. Jonas Salk, who developed the vaccine to fight polio. Next slide, please. Jonah grew up watching people suffer from polio, and he vowed that he would help beat the disease. Although he was a quiet student, he drew strength from his Jewish religion and dreamed of healing the world. He studied hard, went to medical school, and got to work developing vaccines. Next slide, please. And when people around the world heard about Dr. Salk's work, he became famous, and the March of Dimes was founded to fundraise money to help fund his research. Next slide, please. And when the vaccine was finally developed, brave volunteers received the doses, and after the results were carefully studied, millions more received their doses. And most amazingly of all, Dr. Salk did not patent the vaccine. He gave it away for free. This remarkable nonfiction picture book can be used to draw connections to current events and start conversations about the history of vaccines. And this book includes more back matter about the life of Dr. Salk and how vaccines work. Next slide, please. Finally, I just wanted to let you know we have 2 new picture books in some of our most popular series out now. Mars is the newest book in Stacey McAnulty's popular Our Universe series, and Lily Williams has a new picture book about what would happen if bees disappeared. I love that series, really great for STEM units. Next slide, please. If you'd like to hear even more about all our picture books on our spring list, plus middle grade and YA, we'll be buzzing about them on April 12th at our spring preview. You can register for free at the bit.ly link on the screen, bit.ly/spring21 preview, and we'll be joined by special guest Adriana Cuevas. And finally, visit us at mackidsschoolandlibrary.com to find even more resources. Follow us on Twitter at MacKidsSL and subscribe to our newsletter for all the latest updates. Thank you all for joining us today. Please feel free to contact me with any questions. Please feel free to leave questions in the chat, and I'll try to answer all of them today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Kristen. And our next presenter is going to be Laura Bowman. Laura is the sales and marketing manager at Pajama Press. Laura began her career in publishing with Pajama Press in 2016 as the publicity intern and has grown her way into sales and marketing over the last 5 years. When Laura isn't reading or talking about books, she loves to bake, be active, and spend time with her cats. Thank you for joining us today, Laura.
Thank you, Ronnie, and good afternoon, everybody. I am excited to share with you today the upcoming spring picture books that we have from Pajama Press. Next slide, please. Coming in April from author Erin Aladdin and debut illustrator Andrea Blinick is the nonfiction picture book Outside You Notice. Written for ages 4 through 7, this book is a lyrical celebration of the outdoors. Kirkus has given it a starred review, saying this lovely book is more than the sum of its parts. And School Library Journal says this exploration of the outdoors is fit to use for budding biologists. Outside You Notice celebrates a wide range of outdoor spaces, from sidewalks, small gardens, parks, backyards, and even forests, accommodating children who live in urban, suburban, and rural communities. The illustrator Andrea Blinick has also been praised for her for illustrating children of different races and abilities throughout the book. Next slide, please. Each double-page spread features a new location and also a new theme of age-appropriate facts scattered around the page. The first spread, for example, that you see on the screen is all about rainwater, and some of the facts on this spread read, "Do you know what rain smells like? The smell is partly made of oils released by plants, as well as some plants have leaves shaped like funnels to help them catch rainwater." We also have other spreads which focus on topics like animal habitats, fruits and vegetables, soil, flowers, seeds, rivers and erosion, and so much more. And coming in May from the author-illustrator who brought us wonderful books like Happy, Friends, Surprise, and From 1 to 10 to name just a few, is If Only. Mies van Hout's latest picture book is a cyclical story about celebrating oneself and what makes us all special. Perfect for fans of Eric Carle's The Very Hungry Caterpillar, Mies van Hout has illustrated a world of insects and small creatures, including butterflies, stick insects, whirligig beetles, fireflies, bees, and more, with absolutely beautiful colors and patterns. The story begins, the child thought, if only I were a butterfly, then I could fly everywhere. And from there on, we're taken through the thoughts of each of the following creatures, wishing if only they were like somebody else. These thoughts all intrinsically highlight something that is unique about each of these creatures, like how fireflies create their own light and are visible in the dark, as you can see on this spread here. At the very end of the book, we return to the children and we celebrate the fact that they can run, jump, laugh, play, count, build, and so much more, celebrating what makes us special. The back matter also includes a glossary of creatures from the text with a quick fact about each to encourage further research, and a guided activity page about making collage art just like Mies van Hout. Also coming in May is No More Plastic by Alma Fullerton. Alma is the author of previous books like A Good Trade, Community Soup, In a Cloud of Dust, and When the Rain Comes. No More Plastic is a fictional story set on the East Coast about a young girl named Isley. Isley is deeply upset by a beached whale in her community that died due to starvation. and her sadness motivates her to change her habits with using plastic, as well as make a larger change in her community to reduce the amount of plastic that's being used and, more importantly, littered. Next slide, please. The art style features dioramas, which are made from scraps of plastic waste, other materials, sand, and moss. And although Isley serves as a catalyst and overcomes adults' reluctance, this story does avoid the anxiety-causing trope that it's up to children to save the world that they are to inherit. There's also back matter on this book as well, which includes an author's note that explains how the whale in the story died from plastic, on the many other species of marine life that are also impacted by ocean pollution, and ways in which readers can get started on their own journey of reducing plastic. And coming in June is Sunny Days, a companion book to last fall's snow days by Deborah Kerbel and illustrator Mickey Sato. This Weather Days collection of books are written in rhyming couplets and take us through the span of a day, reflecting on the changing state of elements like snow, the sun, and in future, the wind and rain. In Sunny Days, we celebrate the magic of the sun, the rising sun, the clouded sun, the hot sun, and more. Japanese-Canadian illustrator Mickey Sato's work has been really well reviewed. Her collage-style illustrations use various papers like cardstock or tissue, and other materials like felts, fabrics, cotton balls, and embroidery floss, just to name a few, to build these beautiful images. Sunny Days celebrates healthy, active outdoor fun and depicts children from a variety of races participating in the daily activities. The back matter that you see here includes age-appropriate STEM activities about the sun, like, for example, the experiment to touch bricks or stones on a sunny day to feel how they store the sun's warmth. And of course, there's also a note about sunscreen. And here is a little sneak peek of the cover for Windy Days, which will be coming fall 2021. And the last book that I have to share with you today, also releasing in June, is Harley the Hero by author-illustrator Peggy Collins. This wonderful story is being released in time for back to school and will be an excellent primer for discussions about neurodivergence and service animals. Harley the Hero is a fictional story based on true events that happened at Selby Public School here in Ontario. The author, Peggy Collins, is friends with a local elementary school teacher who lives with post-traumatic stress disorder and has a service animal to help her mitigate daily stressors and have an improved quality of life. Harley the Hero is not only about this teacher and her support animal, but it's also about their students and the day a fire broke out at school. The story is told from the perspective of Jackson, a kind boy who narrates the goings-on of the classroom, including Harley's rules, like how the students are not to pet Harley while he wears his vest. Jackson is best friends with Amelia, who is on the autism spectrum and experiences serious discomfort from several different sensory triggers. For example, she hates it when Harley licks her feet, but a lot of the other students like it because it's a sneaky way for them to engage with the dog. But then all of a sudden, the fire breaks out, and the pacing of the book does a really fantastic job of mimicking the energy of a classroom as it goes from a quiet, organized workplace, if a classroom is ever quiet, to a room full of noise, chaos, and even potential danger. All of this chaos causes poor Amelia to suffer from sensory overload, and instead of filing out of the classroom with Jackson and the rest of the students, she runs and hides under the teacher's desk. With the help of Jackson, the teacher, Miss Pritchard, and most importantly, Harley, Amelia is calmly retrieved and ushered out of the school. No one is left behind, and everyone is safe after the firefighters put out the fire. And of course, Harley is a hero for making sure Amelia got outside to safety. The end papers feature Harley's classroom rules, and the back matter includes an author's note, which includes a letter from the real Miss Pritchard, whose real name is Sherry Richards, who identifies her condition as post-traumatic stress disorder and tells us a little bit more about her service dog, Stanley. And that's it for what I have to share with you today. These are the 5 picture books Pajama Press has coming out from April through June. My email address is up on the final slide. If anybody has further questions after today, I would love to hear from you. Otherwise, I'll try to answer what might have come up in the Q&A before the end of the presentation. I hope there's something that's excited everybody, and thank you all for your time today. Stay well and take care.
Thank you so much, Laura. Our next presenter will be Michael Plotz. Michael is Associate Marketing Manager for Children's Titles at DK. He's been a member of the DK team for just under 2 years, but has been reading DK books since he discovered them in his elementary school library. Michael's favorite thing about his current role is being able to express his passion for children's books through creative marketing campaigns. In his free time, Michael enjoys yoga, television, and collecting picture books. Take it away, Michael.
Thank you, Ronnie, and hi, everyone. I have done a few of these webinars now, and I don't think I've ever had to present quite so late, and it is honestly very intimidating to see so many awesome books presented. These are all tough acts to follow, but that being said, I think DK's got a great list of books for you as well, and I hope you'll all find something that you like among the titles I'm about to mention. Before I dive in, I wanted to just give a disclaimer that all the books I've included in today's presentation are currently available in ebook format if the book has already published, or will be made available in ebook format at the same time as their physical formats if their publication date is yet to come. And without further ado, on to the books. Our first book today is Fish, illustrated by UK artist Brandon Kearney and available now. This is a tale about ridding the ocean of public pollution, told through the charming story of a fisherman named Finn and his dog Skip. All Finn wants is to catch a nice tasty fish for his dinner, but no matter how hard he tries, all he seems to catch at the end of his fishing line is other people's trash. The longer he spends out on the ocean, the more crazy objects he collects. Finn and his dog Skip go home each day with a full boat, but empty tummies. It isn't long before Finn finds a way to reuse and recycle everything he has collected. Pretty soon he earns enough money to make a tasty dinner every day, and under his care the ocean becomes clean, bright, and full of fish again. Beautifully illustrated in a muted palette and available now, this book delivers an important message about our environment in a fun, compelling manner. While reading, children will become aware of the growing problem of trash polluting the ocean, and ultimately, we hope, learn to think twice about throwing things away. Next up is Alone Together, a heartwarming story written and illustrated by Julia Seal that highlights the importance of friendship and community during these challenging times. It's a strange sort of day, the book begins, something we can all relate to this past year, I'm sure. Children across the world have had their daily lives and routines disrupted, but this touching story about coping with change will help them to understand and feel less anxious about our new normal. The beautiful illustrations and message of hope will help children see the power of togetherness and understand that even though we might feel like we're alone, we're really alone together. This timely story is available now. Our second title by author-illustrator Julia Seal is Real Superheroes, a celebration of all the heroes in our community who keep our world turning during difficult times, from supermarket staff and delivery drivers to doctors and nurses. The ongoing coronavirus pandemic has made millions of people around the world realize and want to give thanks to the many professionals who have worked tirelessly to look after us, and this book celebrates them wholeheartedly. Little ones will love seeing pictures of diverse children dressed up to do the different jobs, which will help develop their understanding of careers in a kid-friendly way. This book will be available at the beginning of April. And next on our list today is Guinea Pigs Go Gardening. Available now, this sweet story follows Bob and Ginger as they grow delicious fruits and vegetables in their garden through all the ups and downs of the process. Together, Bob and Ginger clear the garden of weeds, make compost to help their plants grow big, plant seeds, and finally harvest their crops ready to make delicious treats like apple pie. Cheerful illustrations by Kate Sheehy bring a rainbow of fruits and vegetables to life, from vibrant red strawberries to glossy green spinach, while practical gardening tips, including a seasonal growing calendar and a compost making guide, act as a gentle introduction to the topic. Next up, look out Leonard. This is a cute one, that's for sure. Meet Leonard the clueless shrew in this hilarious story about getting lost in the jungle that School Library Journal calls a silly romp with just enough suspense to be fun for little ones. It's moving day for the Shrew family, so Mrs. Shrew has asked them all to hold on to each other's tails tightly so that nobody gets lost. They set off in a long line, but wait, where's little Leonard? Kids will be on the edge of their seats as they follow Leonard, who manages to grab onto anything and everything that isn't a shrew tail. Narrowly avoiding catastrophe at every turn, from angry baboons to snapping crocodiles, will Leonard make it back to his family safely? Find out for yourselves in this entertaining tale that publishes today. And last but certainly not least is Lost in the Clouds, a beautiful and sensitive introduction to grief and loss of a loved one and all the difficult emotions that surround it. Billy misses his mommy very much. She lives in the clouds, and some days the sun is shining and mommy's clouds are nowhere to be seen. Those are Billy's favorite days when he and Daddy would play in the garden all day long, and Billy knows that Mommy is letting the sun shine for them. But not all days are like that. Sometimes Mommy's clouds are dark, and Billy feels sad and alone. With beautiful and colorful illustrations to accompany this emotional narrative, the stirring book, available in early May, is perfect for adults to share with their little ones and to help them understand what they are growing through. And before I leave you all for the afternoon, I wanted to give you a second chance to take notes on any of the titles I talked about that captured your interest today. And while you're doing that, I have a short note to share from our children's publisher, Sarah Larder, who says the following. DK's brand new picture books will help children understand and navigate the world around them through engaging imagery, as DK Books have always done, and explore new topics through narrative and character-driven storytelling. Not only will kids learn about their favorite subjects, but these books also offer tools to help them understand confusing global events or challenging emotions in this gentle and relatable format. Children will learn about grief, loneliness, and fear, and how to tackle these uncomfortable feelings through discovery, connection, and embracing what makes them unique. Lastly, I wanted to share a quick reminder to follow us on social media to have all the latest DK news at your fingertips. Now, more than ever, we are doing our best to share helpful, entertaining content for you to pass along to your students and patrons, and we hope you've all been finding it useful. I also wanted to mention that we have a new section on our website, dk.com, and it's called the Home Learning Hub, where we've been posting activity kits, lesson ideas, and other educational assets that will help both kids and adults remain engaged while at home. In a few weeks, we'll also be adding a virtual storytime kit featuring discussion prompts for all the titles I mentioned here today, as well as downloadable activities to enjoy after finishing each book. So be sure to check back on the Home Learning Hub for those materials soon. And last but not least, here are some important links and contact information. Up top is a reminder about the Home Learning Hub, which I just mentioned, and you can also find our current trade catalog on Edelweiss. You can also reach out to us with questions and comments at marketing@dk.com, or let us know if there's anything you'd like to see from us. We always love to hear from our librarian friends. Thanks very much for your time, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the webinar.
Thank you very much, Michael. Our final presenter will be Allison McLaughlin. Allison is the marketing manager at Owlkids Books in Toronto, Canada, where she works with a wonderful team to spread the word about great books. 2021 marks her 10th year in children's publishing, where she feels lucky to work with picture books every day. Thank you so much for joining us, Allison. The floor is yours.
Thanks, Ronnie, and hello, everyone. Thank you for sticking around for 10 more minutes of picture books. So Alkid Books is an independent publisher. We are distributed in the United States by Publishers Group West, and one of our specialties is picture books. So I'm very happy to be here today to show you some great new ones. I have 11 new for spring and 2 sneak peeks for fall. So let's get started. First is Tao. So we are really excited about this one. It's a new picture book from Tao Lam, whose work has earned a lot of critical acclaim. Inspired by her own experiences, it's a story about growing up with a name that's not familiar to the kids around you. A name they can't seem to pronounce properly, as Tao did. This is a very relatable experience for so many people. Maybe some of you, your patrons, your students can relate. And I'm noticing it being talked about a lot lately in media and in social media. Tao's previous books have been mostly wordless. This book has text. It plays with typography, and it uses a mix of collage and childhood photos of Tao. So the story follows a girl named Tao who tries on a different name to fit in. She decides to go by something easy, Jennifer, and it feels better until she opens her lunchbox to find the Vietnamese spring rolls that Tao adores. It just feels more comfortable and enjoyable to be herself. The story is honest, and it's told with humor, and it's so important as we think about things like diversity, empathy, and inclusion. Next book, Tao is also the author-illustrator of The Paper Boat, which earned many accolades in 2020. including a Booklist editor's choice. It's a beautiful wordless story about a refugee journey, also inspired by her family's own experiences. Do check it out if you missed it. And Tao has several other critically acclaimed librarian favorites as well. Next, we have Pierre and Paul. This is a fresh, unusual approach to a picture book series. So these books are bilingual in English and French. They follow the adventures of two neighbors, one who speaks each language. But rather than being a direct translation, parts of the story are told in each language, and simple visual cues help put it all together. So these books were inspired by the author's own experiences with her son in French immersion, struggling to find material to read that would help him learn the language in a way that felt fun and accessible. There are 2 books currently. Avalanche came out last spring and Dragon is new this season. We have never seen bilingual books like this before, so this is pretty unique. Moving on to some new picture books with STEM themes. Journey Around the Sun is a nonfiction picture book that tells the story of Halley's Comet, which is visible from Earth only once every 75 years. The twist here is that the comet is narrating its own story from ancient times to the present, highlighting scientific advances here on Earth every time it arrives. The book earned a starred review, and its great STEM content to spark discussions about our planet. It would be a perfect pick for Earth Day. The Wind in the Trees, this is also great for Earth Day, also with a starred review. It tells the story of one tree growing older as a young sapling grows up beside it. The older tree shares its wisdom about the wind. As a new sapling comes up beside it. It explores life cycles, environmental stewardship, with really beautiful illustrations. Next up, Snooze-O-Rama. This is a nonfiction picture book all about the ways different animals prepare for sleep. So comparing kids' behaviors, like putting on pajamas, to animal behaviors, like certain fish that cover themselves in slime before sleeping. It's engaging and informative and great for read aloud too. The design shows these comparisons with the flip of a page turn, leading to a little suspense and surprise, and the bright collage art keeps things fun. Next, I'll show you some picture books that support social emotional learning. So Frogness is a new picture book about a child and a dog who go out on a muddy, mucky frog hunt in the marsh one summer evening. While they're there, they experience the joy of mindfulness. So despite their best efforts, they never do catch any frogs, but they do find a moment of peaceful pause while they wait to soak in their surroundings. The book celebrates the sights and sounds and sensations of nature, how pausing to take it all in can be the reward, even if you don't catch exactly what you were looking for. It's a great choice for summer reading, and especially now when kids are always around their screens and devices, it's a really nice reminder of the joy of a break in nature. Next up, Barnaby. This relates to themes of growth and change. It's a picture book about a very proud pet budgie who escapes out of envy after his beloved owner adopts a new bird. After his tantrums don't work, Barnaby flies away, living among a pack of ordinary sparrows for a while, learning from them as he gets lost far from home. Eventually, he finds home again with acceptance. This would be really great for kids who may have a new sibling at home or who are adjusting to new situations, and it just got a starred review too. Next, Carmen in the House that Gaudi built. This is based on the young girl Carmen Batlló and the famous architect Antoni Gaudi, who built her family's new home in the city. We see Carmen's resistance and then her resilience in the face of change, finding beauty in Gaudi's designs inspired by the natural environment she loves. I think this book could be especially good to help kids who are feeling resistant to find a way to be open to change and new surroundings. The Story Life of Timothy Schmo. This is a new picture book written in the form of letters of apology from one lovably impulsive kid to various people he has wronged. So for example, he doesn't know you're not supposed to come right out and say the sweater Aunt Gladys knit him is terribly ugly. Timothy accidentally leaves a trail of disasters everywhere he goes, and his antics are hilarious. It highlights empathy and forgiveness in the face of our mistakes. This House is Home tells the story of one bunny and her family's complete resistance to change when developers want to bulldoze their home. Despite her family being set in their ways, she shows a growth mindset and imagines a creative new solution that lets them keep what's important. This would be a great pick for kids going through the loss of something familiar or finding openness to new experience. Next, Tears explores all the different reasons why we cry. It shows the many different kinds of tears, loud ones, quiet ones, angry ones, sad ones, even grown-ups and crocodiles cry. It's a great read aloud for normalizing the healthy expression of emotions. Finally, I'm going to give you a very quick sneak peek at 2 of our lead picture books for fall 2021. So Moon Pops is weird and wonderful. One summer night, it's so hot that the moon begins to melt. One granny catches the droplets and makes them into popsicles to cool down her neighbors. But this means the rabbits who live on the moon have lost their home. The story has elements based in South Asian folklore, and the author, Hina Beck, is the winner of the Astrid Lindgren Memorial Award. This will be her first book available in English, and it publishes in August. And the last sneak peek here, this is A Sour Cherry Tree. So this is a picture book written by Naseem Harab, who also authored Weekend Dad from Groundwood Books, which achieved many honors in 2020. This is a book about a girl who walks through her grandfather's house after his funeral, noticing special objects that stir her memories of him. It's illustrated by Nahid Kazemi, who also illustrated The Old Woman, which garnered great acclaim in 2020. This book contains specific elements of Iranian culture, which represent both the author and illustrator's backgrounds. The Sour Cherry Tree publishes in October. So that is all for today. We have so many more picture books than the ones I highlighted here, and a brand new 2021 backlist catalog that just released. So if you would like a PDF of that to browse more picture books, just email us or find us on social media to connect there. Thank you for listening.
All right. Thank you so much, Allison. And one more big thank you to all of today's wonderful panelists. Tomorrow, all attendees will receive an email containing links to today's slide presentation, as well as the title list, certificate of completion, and video recording. For more about Booklist webinars, be sure to visit booklistonline.com/webinars, where you can view archives of past webinars and register for upcoming ones like those you see here. If you haven't already, be sure to check out Booklist Reader, where Booklist contributors post about all things books and library land. Not yet a subscriber? Pair the page-by-page reading experience of print with the convenience of online access at booklistonline.com and lock in print, online, digital, and archive access by taking advantage of this special webinar offer to get Booklist for only $75. While you're perusing Booklist online, be sure to check out Booklinks, a quarterly supplement to Booklist, perfect for educators and school librarians. It is now freely available to all. To start reading, type booklinks.booklistonline.com into your web browser. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar, and one more thank you to our sponsors, Abrams Books for Young Readers, Macmillan Children's Publishing Group, Pajama Press, DK, and Owlkids. This concludes today's webinar.